I used to live in Lower Michigan, and you know, I was little. And one day, parents announced we'd be moving to Houghton, and I had never heard of it. I had never heard of Houghton. I had never even heard of the Mackinac Bridge. When we arrived after the really long drive, there was all this snow everywhere, and I thought this was great until I had to shovel it, move it, plow it, snow blow it, you know, and everything else. And I just never really liked the cold, which is funny now because now I actually prefer cold and rainy weather and gray. You know, I try to find that every time I go to overseas, I always think, you know, this is just like being home. You know, it's always rainy and gray. How I got started in playing was I had played before I got here to the UP. I used to sit on the edge of my bed and stare out the window and play for hours at the snow falling. And that's all I did. I mean, it got to be a nuisance. I'd bring the guitar with me to school, and teachers would, you know, like I'd play on recess. I mean, I'd get to perform in front of the class and things like that. I took it with me everywhere I went. It was just, we were inseparable. And that's all I did was play 24/7. I really attribute my ability to play on such, you know, like far out levels, based on the daydreams I had, you know, sitting on the edge of that bed. And to this day, every time I look for an apartment or somewhere, I try to find that window where I'm comfortable just staring out the window and watching snowfall. You know, I mean, I'll never forget how the light of the lamp, you know, I mean, there was a street lamp outside my, you know, across the street from my window. And at nighttime, when the snow would fall really heavy, you would see this line that goes like that. And everybody up here in the UP knows what I'm talking about because you see it. But, you know, you don't really get to see it in the cities, you know, because there's always light around. And that magical moment of the snow really connected with me. And I just bonded with my instrument and naming them at a young age. And they became like people to me. And really, I, you know, it's because I didn't hang out with anything else but my guitar. My mom would tell me to, you know, you need to go outside. It's a beautiful day. So I'd pick up my guitar and I'd go outside and play. I'd take my amp out and stuff like that. But my real roots for performing can be traced all the way back to Copper Harbor. At the time, in the 80s, you know, glam rock was prevalent. And, you know, a Hendrix blues guy, you know, just was not really, you know, people didn't know what to think of it. That's what it was. But I retreated to Copper Harbor, and nobody would really drive all the way up there. I guess I was crazy enough, and I'm still driving up there. This Labor Day weekend will make my 17th year playing on Sunday night, you know, during what used to be the Fat Tire Festival. But to me, it'll always be the Fat Tire. But from there, I just kind of grew. And since that time, I've played in 37 states and 16 countries. So, you know, that's where my daydreams on the edge of that bed have taken me.
I'll get it, baby. I'll give that bed $20 bill. I'll get it, baby. I'll give that bed $20 bill.
I started off on, I was a real Beatles nut. You know what I mean? Like but I took to the strange Beatles stuff, like more than like the pop stuff. Like I fell in love with Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, Strawberry Fields, you know, and I mean the psychedelic and the different things. And by the time Sgt. Pepper had hit me, you know, I was really just taken with this whole odd thing called psychedelic music. Then one day, there's always a change in the game, right? I pretended to be sick so I could stay home and watch this thing on HBO called When the Music's Over. And they had Sam Cooke, Otis Redding, Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison, all these people who died. And one of them was Jimi Hendrix. And I remember seeing a flash of him when they were talking at the beginning of the show, and it was like, wow, that was, I mean, I was just kind of blown away. And I was like, you know, I was a little kid. And they did this segment on Jimi Hendrix before John Lennon, which is good because I often wonder if they didn't, would I have stayed to watch the rest of it? Because I mean, like when Sam Cooke was on, like, hey, yeah, come on, and I pretended to be sick a number of times just to watch that show, and I'll never forget how I just went back to my bedroom and just strummed. I had never been so blown away in my entire life. And here in UP, we didn't have record stores. There was no internet. The radio station, shut down at midnight. So there was no means. There was no way I could figure out the names of the songs. And if it wasn't for my cousin Danny bringing me Hendrix tapes, during the holidays, I never would have been influenced that way. But it was cool. Yeah, those are my biggest influence. So
to take a moment for yourself. At this juncture, I'd like to
the thing about Jimmy is he was a really beautiful man. He was just a beautiful spirit. I've read lots of books on him. He inspires me, not just in his playing, but his personality and stuff like that. And when you see how he writes, he had just beautiful penmanship. It was just beautiful. I write terrible, like a street rat or something. You can't even read anything. But Jimmy was beautiful, and the way he wrote was beautiful. And it was probably one of the bigger influences in my life. Yeah. Jack Kerouac and Allen Ginsberg and Charles Bukowski and all the Beats. They have a really huge footprint in my sound too. So it's all about adventure when you play.
I'm getting evicted. Oh, from my apartment. Where will I go?
Probably one of the biggest things I think that people point out to me and I hear all the time, it's about how I play with my eyes closed all the time. And that's probably the biggest clue to what it's like for me on stage. When I first started playing, and here in the UP, there was a lot of dead space out there, like nobody would clap and things. And, I learned to deal with that silence, and by closing my eyes, I would just kind of ignore that terrible thing on the other side of that stage, and I'm in my own little world, and I'd play. And now, literally probably several thousand shows later, I close my eyes because I'm connecting, to this. It's hard to explain. It's just like it's connecting. I know instinctively how to play, what to do. I quit becoming fearful now because it's not really about being on stage. It's about this moment that I'm in where I get to create. And I really enjoy how the people in my life say, you light up like a tree when you're up there. You can tell that you're really happy and, you're just, having fun. And that's what it's like to me. It's like, I call it Wonderland. It's like being in Wonderland. Anything goes, Yeah, Wonderland Forest, Virginia is a real place. I do call that home on occasion. I found it by riding there on my motorcycle one day. I just was riding aimlessly, what you do, when you get on a bike. And I'm fortunate enough that I can get blocks of time off, from my schedule. And I literally just wound up in Wonderland Forest one day. And I thought, it's pretty cool. People ask me that a lot. Is that a real place? Oh yeah, it's definitely real. You should go.
Well, I never said ever, it never would be me. So the do's and don'ts, and maybe I won't together so happily.
Being creative is, it's very fun. You can. One of my favorite sayings is, you can create something out of nothing, and that's probably the coolest thing about being creative. And no matter what you're feeling, you can find a way to express it, get it off your chest, do something with it. And creative is a really cool thing, but it comes with a lot of challenges. It's hard to fall into that structured routine of that 9 to 5 thing, when you have, different types of gifts and things like that. And so I find that the biggest challenge of being creative is being creative. So, but you know, I wouldn't change a thing about it. You know, I mean, there's nothing I would do to take that away from my life. So, you know, life is definitely much more colorful.
I like black stockings, I like pantyhose. I like spiked heels, those stilettos. I like shaving thighs and a slim waistline.
I got tattoos. This is Amsterdam, Wisconsin, Detroit, whatever. This is Bangkok. Yeah, they all tell a story, you know. Usually something I don't want to forget, and I don't forget. You know, it's been like this one. That was a 10.5-hour grind. I mean, and that kind of was hard because it was in Thailand, and the guy didn't really speak English. So it was just the most boring 10.5 hours. And I never forget how sore my arm was. It was raining. I was trying to get back to the hostel. It was raining really hard, and the raindrops hit. It was just ow, ow, ow. But yeah, I was still on a motorcycle in the rain in Asia. I can live with it, you know. But yeah, and this one is one of my favorites. The hat, you know, the Mad Hatter, and most people don't notice, but the compass rose here doesn't have a south. And it only has north, northeast, and west. And that's because you should never look back. You should always move forward. So that's why I took that out. And, you know, this one is called What If. It has all these different eyes, and it's like, you know, any question that you would ask yourself, what if I did this, or what if that didn't happen, or, you know, what if? And that's why that's there. And this is A Sun Made of Colors, which is in a song called Never Said Ever off my 2004 release, Closer to the Far Away. There's a sun made of colors. So tattoos are a way that I express myself in anything that I do. The only time I don't like them is when I get pulled over at 2:30 in the morning trying to get home from playing, and they think I've been drinking or something, and they're just like, could you step out of the car, please? Then it's not cool having tattoos, or meeting a girlfriend's parents the first time. It can be questionable then too. You just wear long sleeves though. I get around it.
I wish that I couldn't say I'm sorry.
I love cotton candy. I that's probably the weirdest thing about me is I love cotton candy, and I listen to really weird, like oddball music, you know, and things. I listen to old time radio, and probably the biggest influence on me creatively, I would have to say the biggest, is like the old time radio stations, the writers, because, you know, when you read the books and you hear the stories, you know, being creative allows me to put myself right there. I can envision the room in the 30s when they recorded that. I can envision all the big equipment with the big tubes and things like that, you know. And for me, it's just putting me in this different spot, you know what I mean? And when William Burroughs writes, you know, Junkie is one of my favorite books. Post Office by Charles Bukowski. Most people wouldn't picture me like an egghead that way, but yeah, I do read all that weird stuff, and I listen to strange music. One time a cop pulled me over for speeding, and he asked me what I was listening to, and I smiled and said, I'm listening to Cher. And he started laughing, and I'm like, what's wrong? Cher's a beautiful human being. And he didn't believe me. I showed him on my iPod. He's like, you're not supposed to have headphones in. I'm like, but you know, it is what it is, you know. Yeah, I've had as many as 180 shows a year I've done, and I did that for a long stretch, and then I just became really, really burnt out. And now I'm in the elder ages of my art. I'm starting to find that I'm enjoying these little runs where I go out for 2 and 3 weeks, and then I take a couple weeks off, and then, you know, taking time for myself and the people in my life, which I never did before. I always put my art first, no matter what. And but yeah, I average anywhere from 100 to 180 shows a year. So you wouldn't think cigar box guitar could take it, but I'm very blessed with the people that make my guitars. Josh Gayu from Smokehouse Guitars, Johnny Lobo, who made that wonderful instrument there. They understand that I'm very hard on my stuff, and usually at the end of a night after traveling and everything else, I just throw it in a case and I toss it and the gear around, and so they make them tough, you know, roadworthy. So.
All kinds of people dancing around in circles, oh, changing the same old dreams.
When I first saw Rosie, this old couple just kind of handed it to me to look at, and this light went off in my head like, oh, this has got to be the coolest thing I've ever seen. And like, I had seen cigar box guitars before, but they were 3 strings, and they were 2 strings, and or, you know what I mean, and I just could not adapt to that at the time. Like, if I'd have started off with Sassy here with the, you know, the broomstick handles, I don't think my love and the passion for the cigar box guitars would have took off the way that it did, because, like, you know, I mean, it was very difficult for me to find a spiritual place inside to go down to where I can't fret chords, because that's my power. I fret chords, I move my hands. I mean, you know, I do these insane guitar playing, and that's my thing. You can't do that when you have broomstick handles. But then one day, when John from Xanadu Music in Memphis, Tennessee, handed me Sassy, a light that was 10 times brighter than anything I'd ever seen just went off, and I have palled around with that guitar. And everybody, and I mean everybody, started telling me, like, right off the bat, like, you know, it's amazing how you play that thing, you know, what you do with it, and it just clicked because it came at the right time. Now I go on the road, I take 2 guitars, I take Sassy, I take Alice, and I'm happy. And it's great, like, if you ever get searched, you know, like at customs, which I've had, you know, like overseas, I'll tell them, oh, I'm a hobbyist, and they don't believe you. But then they take a look at your guitar, and it's made from a cigar box, and they just think you're a joke, and they send you on your way. It changed my life. Cigar box guitars have changed my life. So in fact, I have quote-unquote real guitars, but I never touch them.
Everyone has closets, skeletons packed. We all carry knives, stab each other's backs.
One night I came up with a saying, and I've stood by it ever since, which is, you know, creativity is allowing yourself to make mistakes. Art is knowing which ones to keep. You know, and you know, they say that, like, I have my famous friends, you know, like I've, you know, the people who mentor me, I'm very blessed with some nice people in my life that have really understood that you know, I'm different. I'm in a not a unaccepted genre, but, you know, like, when you hear the word psychedelic, people usually think, you know, drugs and everything else. And me, I prefer that title because it allows me a lot of freedom. Like, I can just do something weird in one of my songs, and not only is it okay, but my fan base, they expect it from me. They show up and say, I know he's gonna do something crazy. I saw him last night. You should see it. It's gonna be cool, you know, and that kind of stuff. And that's why I've kind of flown to that. Like, I mean, if you listen to the Beatles, like Sgt. Pepper, you know, if that album was to drop today, you know, I mean, and it wasn't the Beatles, you know, do you think it would have that kind of impact in response? You know, I mean, if it was outside of the 60s generation, it's questionable, because the quality of the Beatles is really, you know, unchallengeable. But I kind of don't think it would be as well received. You know, the 60s were a very vibrant time. When I first started doing psychedelic music and rock and things like that, and combining that with blues, it was a very interesting time, because, like, people who I had only heard about, you know, I started running across, because, you know, they were the old timers, you know, like the people from the 14th floor elevators and things like that. And Cactus, which, you know, they were like a straight up rock band, but they did some pretty cool things, you know. And now I'm at a point where these people, I can call some of them on the phone and talk to them, and, you know, and people aren't shutting the door the way they used to, and I'm finding out that I'm more at the forefront of that genre than I had really realized, you know. And, you know, I'm getting old, and you know, the nice thing about it is anything I can think of, and I can put it to my guitar. You know, I've built a fan base that will love me for it. They expect it, they want it, and you know what? It's never a dull moment on stage. I can always have fun, and I play blues festivals, rock festivals, psychedelic festivals, Roadburn Festival, you know, things like that. And I'm very blessed that, you know, I mean, I never thought I'd see the day where I would have attention as a psychedelic artist, you know. Although I will admit that when I'm pushing on the blues circuit, I push the blues part of that statement more than I do the psychedelic part. But I don't give any different show that I do, whether it's a rock festival, blues festival, or psychedelic festival, or songwriting event. I deliver the same thing each time, which is my personality and the way I write, and all that came from the edge of my bed, staring out the window.
You better slow down. You're doing too much. Time to hold on, say.
Motorcycles. Wow, that's probably one of the cooler things to get talk about is my love affair with motorcycles. You know, I'm such a career guy. You know, I'm like, you know, as an artist, you know, there's never really a lot of money floating around, you know. And so I'd always put out CDs, and I would take that dream of mine, like ever since I was a kid, like I'm on a motorcycle. My mom would tell me, oh, you're going to kill yourself on that. And, you know, it just grew. And then I just got so used to kind of taking my personal things and aside and sacrificing it for my career. I forgot about it. Then I was in Bangkok, and, you know, I couldn't find one of those scooters to rent. And I'll never forget when the people I was with are like, Mojo, we're going to have to get you a motorcycle, not a scooter. Can you ride a bike? Well, I'm like, well, yeah. So we get there, and it was a lefty, which means that the shifting mechanism was on the right, and the clutch was on my right, and the brake was on my left. And if you've ever been to Bangkok, it's pandemonium. It's like light turns, you go as fast as you can to the next. You know, I mean, you just fly, and that kind of thing. And I'll never forget. It's like, God, you're crazy. You are crazy. And I remember I would slam on the brake because, you know, the clutch is supposed to be here, but that's a brake. And then one morning, we were doing photo shoots the last 2 weeks I was there. Like, so I got to go all over. By that time, we had migrated to Phuket and Patong and all that stuff, and, you know, the really nice area, you know. And I'll never forget when it hit me. We would do all our photo shoots in the morning, and because it was cooler, you know. And you know, I would sweat, and at the end of each day, my face would hurt from the people come up to me and patting me with the towel. I mean, my face would hurt. I'm like, don't touch me, it hurts. And but one morning, I'll never forget how beautiful it was. I wasn't afraid of the bike anymore. I wasn't afraid of the traffic. I had been there for 6 weeks, you know, in Southeast Asia. And then that's when it hit me. I'm like, this is beautiful. And the first thing I did when I got back stateside was I bought myself a nice motorcycle. And I'm still riding. I got another nice one, and I put 22,000 miles a year on a bike. Religiously, I might add. It's part of my soul. Yeah, it was in Madison, Wisconsin. And it's the first and only time it's ever happened. I went in to get some groceries. I came out, I was in a cart, and I could kind of see the guy from when I walked out. I'm like, it looks like he's sitting on my bike, but, you know, from the way the angle was, I could have been wrong. And I got closer, and I noticed that guy he wasn't just like like sitting on the edge of my bike. He was straddling my bike. I mean, like he was about to take a ride. So I didn't want to freak him out and have him drop it. So I was like, wow, that's a really nice bike. And he's like, thanks. And he starts going on and on and on and talking about it. And then he leaned it down and he got off it and he was kind of leaning up against the bike. And I was like, you know, do you ever have a problem with idiots sitting on your bike, say like when you're in a grocery store or something? And he looked at me and smiled and he said, no, everyone knows what happens when you do that. You don't ever mess with a biker's bike. I was just looking at him and I think you could just see the little ding go off in his head. And he took off running and he never stopped. He like never stopped. He just kept going. And I remember it was like a really hot day and I was thinking, so wow, that guy's really afraid. Like, because I wouldn't have made it like a quarter as far as him, you know. But that's the only time it's ever happened, you know. And I saw him one other time when I went back to that same grocery store. And he just kind of looked at me funny, and I smiled and waved and that kind of thing. And it was really harmless. I think he was just enjoying the bike is what it was, you know. You know, I guess I applaud his audaciousness and his courage. And, you know, like there's been lots of bikes I wanted to just sit on because it was cool. But yeah, I wouldn't dare do it, so I don't hold him against it. So no harm, no foul.
I remember walking alone with you. Sunshine days and underneath all the deep blue moon.
The voice is I'm really glad in a lot of ways I didn't get picked, you know, because I think it would have altered my career in a direction I probably would not have liked. My place is in clubs and in theaters and things like that, and I like it there. The whole time that I was there, like I saw people going in from that long line into like different areas, and I went into this separate room where, I mean, there was this, like it wasn't just like 2 or 3 people. There was like, I don't know, maybe 10, 12 people there with computers, and they were looking things up about me and asking me questions, you know, during things, and they let me plug in, and I didn't have to have like this contemporary piece. I was allowed to play anything I wanted, that kind of stuff, and I had gone through like all of that, and then they put me in this other room, and where like all the props are there, and you know, like you see, like, you know, this is Jacob, and Jacob come, you know, that kind of thing, and they ask you questions, and it was really probably one of the more intense moments of my career going through that. I really thought I had nailed it because, like, even when we were walking out, they escorted, there was like a bunch of us from that room that had made it past thing. Even though there was like 3 people in front of me and 4 or 5 people behind me, the people that were walking through all stopped to shake my hand and talk to me and things like that. So I really kind of had it in my head that I thought I was going to get this. But I think that the challenge for them was that I have CDs out. You know, I have toured, I have done things, you know, and that competition is not for people who are established. So, but they've asked me again, and I like to think that it's because they want to keep the relationship open. So who knows what will happen in the future, you know. But it was very interesting. I still remember the guy going like that, you know. It's like trying to encourage me to do more while I was in front of that camera, you know. And that was it was crazy. I like, again, notwithstanding all those people on the computers and stuff, but they had these huge cameras on you and lights and everything around. There was all these people, and like anything I needed, like I could have said I want a popsicle, and someone ran and got me a popsicle. It was just bizarre. It was a very challenge for me. I really don't understand how I wound up, you know, being asked to do that, but they called me. They did not send me an email. It wasn't a letter. They physically called me on the phone and said hi. I think it was the McKeely casting agency or something like that. But I went in there with they told me that, you know, you have a lot of flexibility, Mojo, just show up. It was really strange. So I mean, I still to this day, in both of them, I wonder if they were even casting me for the show. They may have been casting me for something else because they cast for a lot of different things. It was really interesting. I mean, and I like the fact that they stay in touch. It makes me feel like I'm getting somewhere in life,
You are my friend. I'll stick by you, and you stick by me to the very end.
The UK was not my first stop in Europe. To this day, I still go in and out of the Netherlands. And Amsterdam is my favorite city on the planet, really. Most people think I go there for other reasons, but I actually go there because of the tulips. I like the tulips, and the Dutch are exceptionally nice people. I mean, I have some nice friends in Amsterdam now. I finally get to the UK. My manager, who just died last year, is a real tragedy for me. Ray Broadband, that was his career name, but his real name was Raymond Howe. He's the only person I've ever met that had actual gold records from Miles Davis, with his name on them, because he had worked with Miles Davis right up until the day Miles died, in some type of tour capacity, that kind of stuff. But like he's worked with Motorhead, Iron Maiden, U2, Air, I mean, just tons of people, Pink Floyd. And when he retired, he didn't want to get out of the game. And one day I was working a factory job in Appleton, Wisconsin. Didn't have any CDs. I had 2 CDs out, I think, but nothing big. And the email was very, very quick. I'm going to play some of your music on my radio show tonight. Is there anything you'd like to say to European audience? So I just sent an email back saying, yeah, tell him I said hello, which he did. And then he started emailing me more, and then that grew into a point where anytime I put out an album or something, I knew that I was going to get radio airplay in Europe from a good station, from a good DJ, from people that were doing something significant over there. And then he kept inviting me. I finally accepted, and I wound up in Spain, of all places, and picked me up in a van. I slept all the way back from when he picked me up to his flat. And that's how I got to the UK. And I went all throughout Europe. I played the O2 Academy, not once, not twice, but 6 times. And 3 of those times we were sold out with Molly Hatchet. And I'm now very good friends with their keyboard player, John Galvin, who he's a hero to me. I mean, like, you talk about Molly Hatchet, they had hits, like big hits, and they toured and they did arenas, coliseums, talking to him and stuff like that, on a personal and said, like, John, what's it like to play a coliseum with tens of thousands of people? And he's just like, to him, was like, well, just like a sea of people, you can't even, it's pandemonium. I'm like, my God, I've never experienced that, and that kind of thing. So the UK was really cool. And I now am friends with a bike club there, a motorcycle club called the Oxford Leathers. We were playing at this place called the Bear Pheasant in Oxford. A cool little music joint. If you happen to get to the UK, I definitely recommend stepping in and say hi. And that was the first time, like in all the times I had been to Europe, where I actually felt like I was at home when I was away. Because like I went to an after-bar party with people, and it was fun. I mean, we talked, and I remember I spilled the beer all over my coat. And the guy, we were really drunk, and he was like, "Hey, Mojo, we will wash her up," and it was so late, and like here we are, there must have been 50 people there, and we're doing laundry, because I didn't want to stink like dead beer, all the way on the train and everything else, and it was just really cool, and the riding club, they showed up, they just happened to be there, they didn't even know I was playing, and I just loved them. I'm a biker. So we had something in common, and now I very proudly wear their patch on my bike coat. So the UK's been good to me. So they have a good absinthe there too, I might add. So
when I hit Chicago, it was freezing cold. wait about 8 days, and I hit the road.
I'd never heard of Absinthe before until one night at a party. Someone's like, here, oh, Mojo, I've been saving this for you. You should try this. And they just poured it. And it was really strong. What is it? He's like, it's Absinthe. Absinthe. I was like, Absinthe? He starts telling me about it. And then it hit a home run with me. I really connected with that. And then when I started researching it, because I want to know what it was, I found out that it was this folklore drink that was been consumed by literally thousands of artists since it's been invented. And it's got a bad rap. You know, you're supposed to go crazy and you hallucinate, which is all a bunch of shit. You don't hallucinate, and if it did, I'd probably drink a lot more. But no, yeah, and I wound up just writing, and I came up with this album called Absinthe Journeys, which turned my career like right around. All of a sudden, people noticed me, people cared, and people started showing up, and people started buying albums and things like that. And they were doing that before, but the response was really overwhelming with that album. It still is, you know. The complaints I've gotten on the album is that people wish that Vagabond was a lot longer, you know, that I should have finished it differently. And I was like, well, it's art. I finished it the way I wrote it, you know. But it's a good album. It's one of my, I'm really proud of it, really. So.
Money is the root of all evil.
My most recent album, it came out in a pair. The Milwaukee album, which features Chris Duarte. He's on Shrapnel Records, I believe. Which I grew up listening to Shrapnel Records. Steve Vai and all these other people are on there, you know. And, so I had heard of Shrapnel, and Chris is just a really good guy, and you won't find a finer guitar player out there. And that guy really just does some inhuman things. And so for me, it's when I watch him play, it's like being on a roller coaster. I mean, I can anticipate all that stuff, and I fly. I really love it. It also has Victor DiLorenzo from the Violent Femmes drumming on there, and lots of other cool people. And we recorded that one in a mansion in Milwaukee for a whole week. And then this other album that we did while we were recording it wasn't meant to be an album. It was just for fun. It was called Wonderland, and it was just all this really weird psychedelic sounds and stuff that we did it one night at like 3 in the morning. And it turned out really, really cool. So I put it out. I mean, that's the nice thing about modern society. You know, I mean, like in kids growing up here in the UP, you had nowhere to turn. There was no internet. I mean, you could mail something out. It cost you money. You'd get a rejection letter if you got a rejection letter. But now, you know, you can do a lot of things. And with the recording and stuff, I mean, it's really easy to take stuff that is not acceptable by a label, then you can take it and you can still put it out, you know, and you can make it available in various ways. And so nothing goes to waste anymore, which is nice. So. Yeah, I dig graves. A grave digger, that's, you know, don't ask me how I got the job. I just kind of fell into it. Yeah, I just kind of fell into the job. Working in a graveyard is very interesting work. You know, the stones have a way of taking on their own life, you know, when it's just you. You know, and it was a smaller graveyard, not like a small one, but like it was a smaller one. You had to be 100% Jewish to get in there. And so it was next to a cemetery where anyone would take. You know, you could be a Havzi or, you know, part Jewish or whatever, and it didn't matter. But in that particular graveyard I worked in, you had to be 100% Jewish. So it was interesting, like the area where they put all the babies, the stillborns, and the people who died. It was always a weird thing, you know. I mean, but nighttime riding out there on my motorcycle was always a little funny. But I learned more about life, you know, working at the graveyard. You know, I mean, it has a way of making you understand the circle when you're filling in a hole, or when you're doing what you do with the graveyard, because you're dealing with the final resting place, You know, you see things and stuff like that. And, you know, I did a lot of writing there. I still do. You know what I mean? It's just quiet. And even in the middle of a big city, it's still quiet. I don't know how that happens, but in the middle of a graveyard, it still manages to be quiet in the middle of the city. So, and one of the things that I do, one of the songwriting events that I participate, there's a couple of them I participate in, and one is called Dark Songs, and that's in Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin, and it's run by Pat McDonald. You know, he wrote that song, "The Future's So Bright, You Gotta Wear Shades." He also plays Lobo, like that. And that was my first experience with a Lobo, and first time meeting John Lowe, who makes them. And so, like, I'm kind of, people are like, don't we all envy Mojo this time of year? Because it's about Halloween, you know, we dress up in costumes, we write these cool songs, and, you know, and I'm digging graves, you know. But yeah, it's very, very profound working in a graveyard. You know, it's just nice. This year will be my 5th year at Summerfest, like, which is odd for me because, like, I had tried to get into Summerfest, and, like, they have thousands and thousands of bands that try to get into Summerfest, and I was just lost in the mix. And I got it one year because of my manager, Howard. You know, whatever it is that he does, he did, and I got into Summerfest. Then I got in a second time, in, you know, 2 years in a row, 3 years in a row, 4 years in a row, and this will be my 5th year in a row. And, you know, I've had later time spots, I've had earlier time spots. My favorite, though, people always think I'm crazy. I like the noon spot on opening day because people are so excited they come out, and you can have a nice crowd at a noon spot. I can enjoy the festival the rest of the day, and, you know, and I don't, you know, I'm still in town. It's nice, but Summerfest was when I started to realize I was actually kind of getting someplace, you know, because, like, you know, rising above, being seen out of all those bands, that's really what that did for me. It didn't matter what time spot I was getting because, I mean, geez, I got picked, you know what I mean? And, you know, here in UP, you know, it's small. You know, sitting on the edge of that bed, you know, you have those dreams, you know, the things that you want to do, and then, you know, you get to do cool stages. My very first concert was Molly Hatchet, you know what I mean? And I saw them here in the UP, you know, Michigan Tech. And I talked to him just this past weekend. I'm like, hey, do you remember that time when you played in Houghton, Michigan? And he's like, yeah, you know, I do remember that. That was that play. It was way out of the way. I'm like, yeah. And then I would tell him things that happened, like Dave, the guitar player, almost tripped. And which is interesting because I've talked to Dave about almost tripping, and he remembers almost tripping, you know, because it was Houghton, you know. But that, you know, that's the nice thing about, you know, things like Summerfest and festivals and O2 Academy, and, you know, I'm really blessed, you know, to get to do some interesting things at this juncture of my career.
She was a soul.